Hello and welcome in to We the Peasants podcast. Mr. Dad Bod here. Lots of stuff going on, but first I want to kind of piggyback on the video that I did with volunteer slavery. I want to kind of touch on that a little bit because we all know where my stance is on everything. The government is too much involved. They need to loosen the reins because they do nothing for the American people. Whether it be Republican or Democrat, it just seems to be the way of life is to screw the American people and help every other country and every other person besides American people. But I've talked about it many times. I even wrote a book about it. It's called We the Peasants, an 8th Century Stronghold, where I talk about the kings and queens of the world. Back in the day, there was kings, queens, and in their kingdom, they had peasants. Now, peasants constantly were trying to rise up against the kings and queens because they did not like the tyranny that was going on. They were given a certain amount of food, they were given a certain amount of this, allowed to sleep in the streets and the alleyways as bums, basically. And if they tried to do anything, to get money, to do anything, they had their hands cut off, they were put to death, whatever have you. I mean, that's just the way it went. Kings and queens got tired of peasants, like you and I, rising up against them. We constantly were trying to get out of that ruler dictatorship type situation. So, they all came together, these elites and kings and queens, and they decided, you know what? Let's make a constitution and a declaration of independence. And let's tell these people that from now on, they will have a vote. They will be able to vote for Congress, Senate, and presidency. We'll make a president. And these people will look out for their best interest. So they put that all together. Got it all started. And it's been going ever since. And as Americans, we have thought that this was a great accomplishment. And they basically did a sleight of hand, a card trick with us. Clear back when they signed the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, you might know an author by the name of Thomas Paine. He wrote a lot of books, and one of them was a book where he was trying to let everybody know what they were doing when they created the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the amount of power that they were going to give to the federal government. He was not okay with it. And he tried to speak out against it and was put to death. Well, he was put in jail and then put to death, but he was silenced. He got a couple books out before he was silenced, and those are great books. You should go check them out. Guy Fawkes is another one who, everybody's heard the, remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason that the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Now, that was in a different country, but it was the same instance. He was standing up to the federal government because of what their plans were in the future. The control, the power. He was standing up for what he believed in. Many, many years ago, people used to stand up for what they believed in. They used to have a voice, but we have all been silenced. We have all been in this matrix that they have created. Now, a lot of people think when I say matrix that I'm talking about the movie, The Matrix. But in reality, it is a matrix we live in. Because from the time you are born, you are programmed in the way that they want you to be. Okay? The reason I'm saying this is if you look at the U.S. federal government's involvement in education began with the Land Ordinance of 1785 and the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. Well, remember, 1776 is when we got our freedom. And the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence in 1789 was when our first president became president, George Washington. Right? The king, the monarchy or whatever, allowed this. But see, we got our freedom in 1776, but we didn't get the first president until 1789. Congress and Senate wasn't established until later on. How did we get our independence in 1776, but didn't get the first president until 1789? That's because it was a ruse. They could not figure out how to stop the people because the people were growing in numbers. In all of these revolutionary wars and civil wars, the numbers, we were gaining in numbers. They had more firepower and more weapons, but we had the determination because we had a voice. We were going to stand up for what we believed in. It didn't matter if we were unalived in the middle of it. We would stand up for what we believed in. Instead, what we got was a sleight of hand card trick. They created all of this stuff in the better interest of me and you, the American people, and around the world. That this was the best option for everybody. So now, in our current world, this system that they have in place, you are born. And the moment you're old enough, they send you to school. And you are in school for 16 plus years. Your developmental years, when you should be learning how to grow vegetables, how to cook, how to clean, how to manage money, how to live in the world, you are sent to a school where you stay for 8 hours a day. Where else would you be working or going to every day for 8 hours a day? We'll come back to that. You're there for 8 hours a day. You have to raise your hand to talk. You are indoctrined with what they want you to learn. It doesn't matter what you would like to learn. You are indoctrined with what they want to teach you. They will force you to learn it. You will walk in line. You will hear bells. You will have to raise your hand to speak. You will have to do all of this stuff that the educational board, through the federal government, is indoctrinating your children with. And if you do not send your kids to the school or a school to be indoctrined with this way of life, they call truancy. And they consider that neglect or abuse of your children. They can arrest you and throw you in jail and take your kid from you if you do not follow their rules and put them in school and make sure that they're indoctrined with their way of life. Okay? Then, after you went 15, 16 years in school, you get out. They want you to go to college. They want you to get a loan to pay for college. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And get in debt ASAP. They want you to get a car, get a loan for a car. They want you to be in debt as soon as you can. The faster the better. The sooner you can get a credit card, the sooner you can get into debt. That's what they want. Because the way of this system is they educate you to go to school, go to college, go directly to work. That way you have to work to pay for those debts. You will never get out of debt. Everybody in the world hopes and prays, literally hopes and prays, begs for a way out. How do I come up with enough money to get out of debt? How can I do it? The fact of the matter is the federal government does not want you out of debt. They make trillions and trillions of dollars off from this sleight of hand trick that they pulled hundreds of years ago. Because you have to work and stay in debt. You've got a house, you've got a car, you've got credit cards, you've got loans just to survive. Because the money you make at your jobs, even if for some miracle you went to college and you got a really good job, in today's world, it is hard to survive. I mean, look at the price of trucks and cars. From clear back to the 70s and 80s when you had, $3,000 pickups to 2025 when you have $115,000 pickups, $70,000, $80,000 cars. There's no way to survive. The only way to survive is to be in debt. That is the only way, is to be in debt for the rest of your life, working right up until you perish. That is the system that they created, and that is the system that they want you to stick to. They do not want you to figure out that you don't have to stay in that system, that you could figure out other ways to make money, that you could figure out ways to get out of debt by investments or different things. But, let's step back. The federal government controls the S&P 500. They control the stock market. So even if you invest, 99% of the time, you're going to lose money because that's what they want. Now, there's supposed to be a law in place that states that they're not supposed to charge over a certain interest rate because it's against the law. But that's not the case. Most credit card companies are charging between 29 and 35% interest. And there's a ton of loan companies that are right up to the max or a few points over of what they can charge, as well as these hard money lenders and private lenders who, because everybody is in debt and has no money and has no credit because the federal government decided they would give you a credit score, and that is how they would, monitor your life, nobody can get loans. So then they go to these hard money lenders or these other places to get loans, and they're paying 50% interest, which is against the law. They're not supposed to be doing that, but they are. And people are getting those loans because they cannot afford to live. They can't get groceries. They can't pay their bills, so they're doing everything in their power. How many people that listen to my podcast or are out there have 1, 2, 3 mortgages on their house just to survive? They will never pay that house off. A 30-year mortgage is what they set it up as, because that way, when you default, these big high entities like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, they end up with your property, and they have a huge portfolio. They have more money than most anybody in the whole entire world. They have more money than there is actual cash money in the world. These companies own everything that you can think of, and you are making them richer and richer day by day by going out and breaking your back and paying taxes. Paying taxes is voluntary. That's another part of the Constitution. It was meant to the government was never to levy taxes unless there was a wartime situation. Well, they amended the Constitution and they pulled another sleight of hand card trick. And they got you to voluntarily agree to pay them taxes. It's a voluntary system. You sign up for it and you do it voluntarily. You pay the taxes voluntarily. Now, they do send out things saying we're going to audit you or we're going to put you in jail just to threaten you to pay taxes. It is basically a BFOQ situation, a this for that. They are blackmailing you into paying taxes by threatening you. And they get away with it because it's part of that system that they created. Everybody knows that the Federal Reserve was created right after the sinking of the Titanic, where everybody who opposed perished on the Titanic, which was actually the Olympic. They all perished, and then they created the Federal Reserve, a private entity that handles all of the money for the United States. All of your tax dollars, every ounce of money is handled by a private entity. Now, they say that Congress and Senate make, bills, and they can have votes on how it's ran, but that's not the case. It's not. It's ran by the elites. There is shadow governments running within our government who are filthy rich because of stealing taxpayer money. And all of these wars that have happened throughout history are just an endless checkbook. Most of the wars were created by false flag attacks by our own CIA and FBI. They pretend to be attacked in the Red Sea or in the Gulf of Mexico or in Afghanistan or wherever. They pretend that this happened so that way we can go to war. And that is how most every war has started. And trillions of dollars is spent on these wars, which most of the money is laundered back and put into the pockets of congressmen, senators, presidents, and the elites, the shadow government. They make trillions of dollars off of you every day because their plan that they put forth back in 1776 to today has worked beautifully for them. They had an amazing idea and they put it forth, and let me tell you what, if you went and sat down with your local bank and you proposed that business idea to them today, they would be like, wow, that's a great idea. Trillions of dollars will be flowing through this in no time flat, and no one will be the wiser. They will voluntarily do it. How did you possibly come up with this? That is what it was like. It was like a business plan that they proposed, they got it pushed through, and we are willingly doing it. We willingly give them our money. Every dollar that we spend, we send our kids to these schools, our grandkids go to these schools. They are getting indoctrinated to be the same way. Every year, the federal government raises the age for when you can retire. You know why? Because people are starting to live a little longer. They're starting to wise up to all of the food that they're feeding us is killing us, and so they're trying to grow their own food or eat healthier, and they're living longer. They discovered the cures to certain diseases like parasitic infections, ivermectin, fenbendazole, hydroxychloroquine, methylamine blue have been proven to cure people. Now, what does the federal government do with that information? They try to hide all of those medications. They won't let you get them, and they raise the age to retire because the Social Security that you put into out of your own paycheck, you pay into it yourself. That is your money you put in there. They say it's running out and running dry, but that's because they keep stealing from it. They steal your money, and what they want you to do is work until you're 70 years old. That way, your life expectancy is 70, 75 years old. You will die before you get to collect it. And that is the only non-transferable investment in your life. You will never be able to transfer that money to your children or to your family. The federal government keeps it. That's exactly right. You work your whole life, missing out on the first walk that your children do, the first words, the first everything, because you're at work, busting your ass, trying to make a living for your family, which is not enough. It will never be enough because the federal government takes more than what you actually make. And then they trick you again when it comes time to tax season. They say, oh, well, we'll give you an earned income credit and we'll give you the child tax credit to force you to willingly file taxes. Now, most people pay 24 to 30% in taxes. So that means I'm not a mathematician, but say you made $55,000 for the year, they're going to take 24 to 30% of that. Now, you may get a tax refund because of the earned income and child tax credit, which yields you maybe maybe $10,000. Well, they still keep $10,000 to $20,000 of your money, because at $50,000, 10% would be $5,000 that you paid in. So 10,000, yeah, 20-some thousand dollars you paid in, and they give you a $9,000, $10,000 check, depending on how many kids you have. They cap it off at 3. You can only claim 3. So these people are all excited. Yes, the reason that they're excited is because that is the most money that they get all year. And it's just a scam to get you to voluntarily do it. Just like this big, beautiful bill. There is some great stuff in there, but there's also some interesting stuff. The way that the Congress wants to put forth the no tax on overtime is they want your boss or your employer to take the tax out. They're going to take the tax out of your check every week, every 2 weeks, every month when you get paid. Then at the end of the year, they're going to force you to file your taxes if you want to get that money back. It'll be in the form of a tax credit. Therefore, voluntarily making you pay taxes again. Because see, lots of people have wised up and have realized that they do not have to pay taxes. It's voluntary. And they're stopping paying taxes. So the federal government is afraid. They are trying to figure out what can they possibly do to keep us voluntarily giving them that money. Because a lot of people are wising up. They're not doing it no more. And so here they are passing this deal where, we won't tax overtime no more. And if your salary, you'll still get overtime. But you have to file your taxes at the end of the year in order to get it. Voluntarily making you do it. That is what these little tricks that they do by giving you EIC, Earned Income Credit, and the child tax credit, and now you'll have the overtime tax credit, and all of these things are credits that they want you to do because they want you to file on your own. Therefore, you're voluntarily doing it and there's no issue. Now, I know people who haven't filed taxes in years. Do they get letters once in a while? Yeah, but they cannot act on them because it's voluntarily done. If you don't voluntarily do it, then there's nothing that they can do. There is no law in the books that says they can come after you. You can look it up. And they're losing the reins. And currently, we have seen a lot of talk of World War III. They've been talking about Iran and Israel and Russia and Ukraine, and that we've never been closer than ever. We're on the brink of World War III. And what does everybody talk about when it says World War III? In the Bible, it says that that's the end of the world. Because remember, God flooded the world, and he said the rainbow was a promise to never do it again. The world would be destroyed by man's hands. Well, let's just take a look at that. Who does that benefit? Well, the federal government. The federal government wants to reduce the population by 80% because, like hundreds of years ago, back in the day when we had all of the people who had enough and stood up because they had a voice. They stood up to the federal government, and we had civil wars because these people were not going to take the bullshit. Well, today, it's happening again. There's 77 million Americans and millions more across the world who have said, you know what? I've had enough of this bullshit. I'm tired of it. I'm not doing it anymore. Well, what does the federal government do? They're paranoid. Their only option is to reduce the population by 80%. That way it's more controllable. Those numbers are controllable for the federal government and the world. Because if you reduce the population by 80%, you have more food, the government has the upper hand, they can put us in 15-minute cities, have us using electric cars, they can have control over us again. Well, you ask, how could they reduce the population by 80%? Well, they've been trying for a long time. They have COVID that they tried. That took out lots of people. They have natural disasters from the weather machines that they can control. That takes out lots of people. They have biochemistry labs in Ukraine and around the world, in China and different places, where they just test just for the hell of it to see if they can kill us off. I mean, if you look up Operation Sea Spray, they've been doing it since the 60s. They've been testing viruses on us all the time just to see how many it would kill. Look at September 11th, how many people were taken out there. And that was all a facade just so that way we could go to war for 21 years with an endless checkbook and pay $50,000 for a bag of washers. With Joe Biden's brother being the head of the construction contracts. You look at Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and all them. Most of these people have been in there for 50, 40, 30 years. Congress and Senate was never meant to be a career. It was meant to go in and help your constituents, the American people, get their voices heard, and get bills passed that were for the American people. These people have lived their lives there and have made millions of dollars. How many jobs in the private sector do you know of that you can have several mansions across the United States and in other countries, own private islands, yachts, jets? Not many. But in Congress and Senate, making $170,000 a year, you can afford all that stuff. You can have multiple mansions, multiple yachts, jets, private jets, and it's all taken care of by you and I, the taxpayer. That money that they're stealing and that they're finding out with Doge, well, they were finding out with Doge, that got shut down pretty quick. Trillions of dollars. In the last 100 years, $350 trillion has went missing from the American taxpayer and used to enrich the federal government and the shadow government and the elites. And here we are, still today, wondering, hoping, dreaming, what can we do? Go play the lottery? Oh, wait a minute. That's a non-profit owned by the federal government and ran by the states that can be rigged. And every time there's a $1 billion jackpot, something glitches, something happens, and somebody in a small town in California, in a little tiny gas station that nobody's ever heard of, wins the $1 billion jackpot. And the last time was the biggest jackpot in world history, $2.2 billion. And they put on a whole show for that one. First it glitched overnight, and they couldn't draw the tickets. Almost 2 days later, they finally drew a ticket, and it was the winner out of this, like I said, a small town in California, rinky-dink gas station that probably doesn't even do $1,000 a year in business, sold the winning ticket. And it just so happened that two guys were fighting over the ticket. So they had to have that whole show to make it look real good for you. But in reality, the federal government took half of that money before it even got distributed. And then another 35 to 40% went to taxes. So on a $2.2 billion win, someone ends up with $300 million. Now don't get me wrong, it's a lot of money if that person actually won. I think it's the federal government who got the money. But if someone actually did win and they wind up with $300 million out of $2.2 billion, That's a scam if you ask me. That is scamming the American people. Once again, they're always out to scam us. You invest in Robinhood or Acorns or any of these places, they own the S&P 500. They're only going to make themselves rich off of your investments. Your money is going in there to enrich them. Just the same as it is when you pay taxes. It's sad. It is a sad, sad situation that we've got going on in our world. And is there any light at the end of the tunnel? It doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like anything's going to change. Donald Trump is trying his damnedest, but he's getting met with roadblocks at every avenue. This man is trying to run the country like a business, which is what needs to happen. And he is getting stopped at every avenue. They do not want to allow him to do his job. Why? Because he wants to help the American people. The federal government does not. The federal government looks at you as a peasant that pays taxes and does what they're told and doesn't question anything. And if you do, then you're in some serious trouble. I mean, look at January 6th. Peaceful protests. We went there to peacefully protest. The people let us in. Well, I wasn't there, but I mean, they let the people in. The American people. Us, the American people, in. And they had paid actors that were FBI agents, it's been proven, that started shooting paintballs and rubber balls and creating mischief. And what ended up happening? Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed by Michael Byrd. He's still walking around. She didn't even have a weapon. People were put in prison for 4 years with no due process, just left there to rot. And finally, Trump became president, got them out, but the damage cannot be reversed or undone. They got away with it. And here you've got, all these riots that are going on right now. The No Kings protests, the Iranian protests, all of these protests going on where they're burning down buildings, hurting people, burning cop cars, smashing windows, and nothing is being done about that. Why? Because it's the Democrats. The shadow government protects them. We also have the 2020 election. The evidence has came out that the 2020 election was stolen with the assistance of China. Nothing is being done about it. No arrests. DOJ committee has found out about Act Blue and USAID and all these people stealing and laundering your tax dollars. Trillions of dollars. Nothing's being done about it. No arrests. No handcuffs. Why? Because the system that was put in place was never to help you, the American people. It was put in place to instill fear into you, make you think that you had a voice, and make you work until you die to make them rich. Congress and Senate have immunity from insider trading. They have immunity from certain laws that are passed by Congress. They have immunity for most everything out there. The only way that they can be arrested is by military action from the National Guard or the military go in and arrest them. So they get away with basically murder. And they have. We've seen it on numerous occasions. The children that have went missing, the illegal immigration coming across the border that they have allowed for years because they give those people money to vote for them so that way they can put who they want in and control them and get their agendas accomplished. Sadly, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. What are we going to do as Americans with what they've been doing to us for the last hundreds of years? When will the actual truth come out? I mean, we know now, since Trump has become president, that John F. Kennedy was assassinated by the CIA and a sitting vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson. I mean, that in itself should be enough for the American people to say, you know what? No, I'm done with this. But it wasn't. September 11th. We know that the narrative that they gave us is not even close to accurate. Planes don't just disappear when they hit a field in Pennsylvania. Planes don't just disintegrate when they hit the Pentagon. There's still pieces left. They lied because they lost $200 trillion and they were about to be investigated for it. And what better way? Crash a plane or a missile into that part of the building, everything goes up in smoke, we go to war for 21 years, and they spend $100 trillion. All of these things are going on in the matrix that you live in. They were designed perfectly. Like I said, it was just like going into a bank and asking for a loan for a new business. And these people, probably their jaw dropped and was like, wow, that is an amazing idea. We will rule the world with this business plan of yours. And you know what? They have been for hundreds of years. We don't know what is true anymore. Most of the stuff that we've been told our whole lives is a lie. This is just me, I don't believe that there was ever dinosaurs. I believe that there is a God, but I believe that the Bible was another thing that was put together as a control tactic. Power, control. I believe that the Tartarian Empire was real. The mud floods, I believe those were real. I believe the orphan trains where they indoctrinated children to tell us the history that we believe now is real. A lot of these things that people don't realize, unless you're paying attention to it daily, you don't even know the half of what's going on. And it's sickening to think that for the last couple hundred years or longer, these people have been lying, cheating, and stealing. And we're voluntarily allowing them to do it. We could bat that around till the wee hours for sure, but I think we're going to call her square right there. Here soon we're going to have some guests on We the Peasants podcast. We're going to be talking to some people. We're going to try to get on here a lot more. It's just a little difficult because I want to do more on We the Peasants. I want to have people be able to listen in their cars and be an hour long or hour longer. But until I get someone on here with me, it's hard for me to just talk by myself for an hour. So I'm new. I have my social medias. You can go to mrdadbod.com. I have YouTube, 148,000 subscribers. I thank you all. I love you all. We have TikTok where they have already banned me. I had 10,000 followers. I had millions of views, and they banned me. So I've started a new one. Mega X, Mr. Dadbod is on there. You can check me out on X, Mega X, Mr. Dadbod. All kinds of places you can find me. You can also check out my books, R.P. Stanton, on Amazon. I have several books that I've written on there. But yeah, we're going to do a lot more. We're going to talk a lot more about a lot of different things. I know it's called We the Peasants podcast, just because that was the name of my book. My son actually gave me the idea for the name, so I love him for that. But we're going to talk about movies. I want to talk about life. I want to talk about music. I want to talk about religion. I want to talk about everything on this podcast. People who were battling addiction. I've got some friends here in town that have a podcast. I'd like to get them on here and we talk. We'll just talk about things in life in general. What can we do about it? What can we do to get out of the matrix that we're in? Let me know in the comments if you think of anything that we could do to get out of this matrix. How can we make money without living at a job or having the government take half of it? These are all questions that we need to answer, and we need to answer them quick before these elites decide that they don't need peasants anymore, and they really do eliminate the population by 80% like they're trying. So I love you all. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next podcast.